The Anthony Davis to Detroit rumors take another turn. A young Piston goes off for 40, and we preview the Pistons' upcoming game against the Hawks in just a moment. Welcome back to the Piston Jack YouTube channel. We've got an action-packed episode for you today. We're going to lead off with the latest on the Anthony Davis to Detroit. What the hell is going on there? Then we're going to take a look at a young Piston who went off and had an incredible game and what that could mean for the Pistons rotation. And we will finish it off briefly touching on the Pistons game against the Hawks on Friday night. But let's get straight into this Anthony Davis news. I'm sure a lot of you have been across it, but for those that have been under a rock or just taking a break while the Pistons have had 4 or 5 days off here now, a few days ago, Shams from ESPN wrote and went out and said on one of ESPN's shows that the Pistons are one of 3 suitors, could be trade suitors for Anthony Davis as we approach the NBA's trade deadline in February. This obviously sparked fake trades galore, Pistons fans in panic. I spoke about it here. I've done short form videos. I did a long form video here, but essentially we spoke about it. He only said trade suitors. So none of this alluded to the fact that the Pistons are in negotiations, have begun the framework of a deal. However, it's Shams who said this. So even myself was shocked. I was like, wow, okay, there must be some legs to this. However, in the past 24 hours, there's been multiple reports, beginning with Omari Sankofa II, who covers the Detroit Pistons and has covered the Detroit Pistons for the past, I want to say, 5-6 seasons. He wrote an article, and I suggest you go all check it out, but he basically headlined it saying, per source, the Pistons and Mavs have had no conversations. So that's as pretty much outside of Shams. Omari is close with the team. He's covered them every day. He has connections. That's a pretty resounding, report from him that there are no conversations. Now, Brett Siegel from Clutch Points also wrote an article detailing some fake trades for AD, but he sided in there as well that to his understanding, there's been no conversations between the Pistons and Mavs. And then earlier today, Mark Stein, who's a long-time NBA news reporter, news breaker, who now writes for his own brand or publication, the Stein Line, he also said that from everything he's hearing, the Pistons aren't looking to make a splashy trade. So I think deep down, myself, I must admit, when Shams spoke about what the package could look like for Anthony Davis and some Pistons fans and stuff were throwing out fake trades, in my mind, this is wishful thinking from a Pistons fan in myself, but if you could get AD without giving up Asar, Ron, Cade, JD, and Jalen Ivey, I would do it. I would, but I don't think the Mavs would be interested in that. They would at least want Jaden Ivey as the young piece. They need a point guard for the future, and JI's got heaps of potential. Now, I want to see what JI's got, but if you could have kept those 5, give up some picks and the salary, personally, I would feel like an idiot. Just myself, not to say I would do that, because Anthony Davis, you would still have your core, you would still have Stu as well. Adding Anthony Davis, even though he's 33 in March, with a contract extension looming, I just think you've got such an incredible young core there, and you add one of the best 75 players of all time. I don't really care about his age and injuries that much when you've still got that core. Because if he can give you 50 good games and, go off a couple of games per play, each playoff series, then man, I think you submit yourself as the best team in the East. But that's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And I think Anthony Davis at this stage of his career kind of goes against everything that Trajan spoke about wanting. And on top of that, JB Bickerstaff kind of on a recent podcast episode, I believe with Woj, who's got a new podcast going, spoke about how the Pistons earned the right. They didn't want to make a splashy move this summer, he called it. And the young core, after what they did last year and what they showed in the playoffs, earned the right to run it back and show and prove how far they can go. Because, the way the front office is looking at it is we didn't have Stu in the playoffs and we also didn't have Jaden Ivey for the second half of the year. How much better could have we been? Because I think, in my opinion, and I think the front office would be the same as well, or else they would have moved on from Jaden Ivey. I think they all think this team would have been the same, if not better, with Jaden Ivey there. I think so. I'm a big believer in that. I know there's a fair portion of the fan base that believes the team wouldn't have been as good wouldn't have been as good with Ivey, and that's why they took off. But they were taking off, and he was very much a part of that West Coast trip where everything changed. Cade spoke about that trip, and other players have on the team as well. And Jaden Ivey was thriving in that moment against LA, against the Nuggets, against the Kings, against the Suns. So just my thoughts on that. It doesn't sound like Anthony Davis. There's really anything going on between him and Detroit right now. Maybe Rich Paul, his agent, has been mentioning stuff to Shams, and that's where this is coming from. But nonetheless, I wanted to address that off the top. Now, secondly, Chaz Lanier, first game with the Motor City Cruise, scored 40 points. And this wasn't a 40-point game where he got up 40 shots and because he was the guy, blah, blah, blah. He did it on 71% from the field and 9 threes. And if you watch the highlights, he hit a couple of pull-up mid-ranges, which we've seen him do at the NBA level. Just a super smooth scorer. And the Cruise lost, but Killian Hayes was on that in playing for Cleveland's G League team, by the way. Shout out. I think when I was watching he had 21 points and 11 assists. So shout out to Killian. Still always wish the best for him. But back to Chaz. What does this type of performance mean? We've seen Saban Lee in the past go down, dominate the G League, and it not really translate. Now, we've seen other players like Dennis Jenkins dominate in the G League last year, look great at Summer League, and then come in and make a huge impact on a 19-5 Pistons team. So which end of the spectrum does this performance fall? I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think this is a Saban Lee, because Saban Lee was always a tremendous athlete. And at the G League's known for not having the best rim protectors and not having like the best paint defense. Because if you're a 7-foot big man and you play pro basketball, it's not just about the NBA. Every team around the world is looking for true 6'11", 7-footers that can defend and score inside. So those guys are typically, if they're not in the NBA, they're making money in Europe, they're making money where I'm in Australia. Like, they are a premium type player, like, globally. So the G League typically misses out on those types of guys, especially more proven defensive bigs. Hence why someone Saban Lee can go down and cook, because he's a tremendous athlete, tremendous finisher, but he could never figure out the jumper. Now, for Chaz Lanier, his whole game is predicated on the jumper. So for him to go down there, yes, the athleticism and the closeouts aren't as good, but he's proven even at the NBA level so far, in my opinion, that he can knock down shots. So I think this is positive. I don't think this is a case of an NBA player or a draft pick dominating lesser competition. I think this is a proof of concept that this guy can shoot the ball, and there's potentially a rotation spot for him if injuries come back to plague this team, which they undoubtedly will throughout the rest of this season. So when I look at the rotation, this is my current 10-man rotation, because we'll talk a little bit about the health and injury report in the next segment with the preview for the Hawks game. But the Pistons are basically back to full health now. So my starting 5 is Cade, Duncan, Asar, Tobias, Duren. End of story. That's not changing for the foreseeable future. Then I've got Ivey as a backup point guard, because Dennis has now been moved out of that role. He was in their last game before the break. I've got Karras at the 2. Then you've got Ron and Javonte Green as the forwards. They mix between playing 3 and 4. And then I've got Stewart as a backup 5. Now, for me, if Duncan gets injured, I think you got to play Chaz. We saw that in the 2 games Duncan missed. This Pistons offense fell apart. It just did. They scored like 98 points and 106 or something. Like, they couldn't, now that's an issue long term and for this season, but it's because they have no other true shooters. Now, Chaz, as good of a shooter as he is, isn't going to get defended like Duncan, but you still need shooters that are proven knockdown, catch and shoot guys. And I think if Duncan Robinson is injured or misses any time, you got to throw Chaz in there. And I think a performance like this gives the coaching staff confidence, or not so much confidence, because I think they have confidence in all their players. That's why this team thrives when there's injury. But I think it just goes, okay, look, Chaz is a true shooter. We're gonna if there's an opportunity that presents itself with injury, he can come in and knock down NBA range threes. That's what these G League performances kind of just cement, in my opinion. So I would even be open to because I don't think Caris LeVert's ever going to be out of the rotation while he's healthy. I think JB loves him, and I think Caris, for the most part, has been pretty good. He had a slow start, missed most of preseason. So I attribute that to his slow start. And then He's been pretty good for the most part, I think. He's had some moments where you're like, what's going on, Karras? But he's always going to play. For me, I think Lanier could take some of Javonte Green's minutes. I think Ron's been really good lately, and I don't really want to take away too much from Ron's development. So for me, I love Javonte Green. He was exceptional in the Pistons' last win. So I feel bad saying this. But with what the Pistons need on offense, and we've spoken a lot about them missing another shooter, and maybe Malik Beasley will end up being that guy later in the year. But right now, I think you've got a shooter on your roster in Chaz Lanier that you could find some more minutes for. I'm not banging the door down and complaining about rotations right now. I'm just saying, like, going to the G League, hitting almost 10 threes at a 71% clip, pretty impressive. And that's a guy that can do that at the NBA level. And we've seen him knock down some threes. So if the Pistons offense is stagnating, I'd like to see JB just throw him out there. Do what you do with B-Ball Paul when there's some foul trouble, or JD's energy's not great, or Stu's out. Like, same with the Pistons offense is struggling with spacing. Throw Chaz out there for 5 minutes. See if he can knock down a couple of threes for you. That's what I'm talking about here. And then obviously if Duncan's out, I think you got to get Chaz into the rotation in some way with the current roster. Those are my thoughts on Chaz. I'd love to hear your thoughts on him and where he's at. Am I overreacting to a performance? Please let me know. To wrap it up here, the Pistons play the Hawks after a 5-day break. I must admit, I was talking to my good friend, Korean Pistons fan Tom Herr earlier today, and I was saying, I'm not going to lie, I enjoyed like a 2-day break. But these past 3 days, I'm like, all right, enough. Get our Pistons back. Like, I need them back on TV. I'm excited to get into these games again and embrace the stress and the pressure that I at least experience watching this team, because I love it. So the Hawks right now are 14-11. They're 9th in the East. They're 5-5 in their last 10. And the last time Detroit played them was about 2 weeks ago, and they won 99-98. It was where Cade kind of struggled for most of the game as a scorer, but came through in the clutch big time, hit that kind of reverse up and under layup and went around all 5 Hawks defenders. You all know it. They played smooth operator. But they had played that game without Duncan. That was the first game they played without Duncan, and hence how they only scored 99 points. Like, they missed him desperately. So the Hawks will be without Porzingis and obviously Trae Young. They're both ruled out. But Detroit get Tobias back. He was out for their last game, I think against the Bucks. He missed. So some numbers for both teams. Detroit have the 9th best offense. The Hawks are the 14th best offense. The Pistons have the 4th best defense. The Hawks have the 11th best defense. Net rating, the Pistons are 6th. The Hawks are 14th. So when you look at those numbers, both teams are right where they should be. Funnily enough, the Hawks' offensive rating and defensive rating replicates their record of 14-11. So they're a solid defensive team. Even without Porzingis, we've played them twice now, and they've both been close games from memory. I think the first game in Atlanta, the Pistons got a big lead and nearly blew it. I want to say it got close at the end. Please tell me if I'm wrong. I didn't look into that game too much. But and then last game was obviously very close. And the players to look out for are Jalen Johnson. He's become a no-brainer all-star this year. He's pretty much giving you 23 a night. I think something like 10 boards, 6 assists. All-round type player. And if he's playing alongside Nickeil Alexander-Walker or Dyson Daniels, a couple of other guys that can handle and shoot, like, he's in his element where he can just get out and transition. He's going to handle the ball a lot, but where the Pistons can get him is hopefully they can put a SAR on him to really slow him down and not allow him to get a full head of pace and keep bending the defense, getting in there, driving and kicking. But he's a guy to watch. Okongwu is the X factor. In both games, he's knocked down threes, and he's been a bit of a problem for Jalen Duren defensively, where Duren has had to get out and guard him because Okongwu has turned into this really nice stretch big. He typically comes off the bench. He might start, though, with Porzingis out. But in both games, and particularly the last game in Detroit, he was lights out from 3 and was killing the Pistons. So he's a guy to watch, particularly on the 3-point line. On the other end, though, JD can take advantage of him. And Duren has had, in his past 10 games, his probably best 2 games have been against the Hawks in these past 10, where he had 24-8 and then 21-11. So his scoring has dipped recently since an awesome start, but the past 2 teams he scored 20 against were in both of those Hawks games. So he's could be due for another big game, as the Hawks are a little bit undersized on the middle. And then Dyson Daniels and Cade is always a matchup to watch. Last year, Cade overwhelmingly beat that matchup. This year, particularly the last game, I feel like Dyson, I don't think he won the matchup because Cade ended up closing it out. And I think he still had like 28-8 or something, 24-8-8. But if Cade hadn't closed the deal on that game, but this is why he's so good, so I'm not taking anything away from him, Dyson probably wins that matchup. And he just defensively, I'm strictly speaking, like the way he bothered Cade, he's really good at just getting his hands in there. And if you're loose with your handle for a split second, he'll snatch it, he'll deflect it, he'll make you turn it over. He's really good at that. He also was doing that a lot where Jalen Duren, as soon as he bring the ball down, Dyson with him being there, slapping it down. So the Hawks are really handsy, and they're a team that can generate a lot of turnovers with their length, athleticism, and get out in transition. So the last player to watch for them is Nikhil Alexander-Walker, having a career-best season offensively. I think he had like 30-odd last time the Pistons played. So keep an eye on him. Pistons should win this game, though. They should. They're the better team. They're 2-0 against the Hawks. That, if anything, is the only reason I'm a little bit not confident, because typically when you've won the first two and you play a decent team, it levels out a bit. But hopefully the Pistons come back firing and ready to go. I'm excited for it, and we'll be back for Pistons Worldwide episode 6 with my man Tom Herr immediately after that Hawks game. So come join us. Come break down the game and talk Pistons with us. Can't wait to see you there. But until tomorrow, as always, go Pistons.